Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a great lunch. Now, you're all probably a little bit tired and sat in dark lighting and full of food, so we're going to wake you up a little bit. I've got my glamorous assistant, Dennis, here with me, who's going to help me today. And we're going to play a little game. There are prizes, but if you're not sitting down when we start playing this game, you can't win. Okay? So if you want to play the game, you need to be in a chair right now. So the folks at the back of the room, sorry, you're going to be missing out. Okay, so we're going to be playing a really simple game. We call it Heads and Tails. And what we'll do is we'll ask you some questions. And there'll be two responses. It'll be heads or tails. I'll explain how you do that in a moment. What I'm going to ask you to do in a minute is ask everybody to stand up. However, if you are unable to stand up or need some other way of playing the game, please raise your hand so that one of the Microsofties around the room can figure out a different way of enabling you to participate. One small thing as well, if you're a Microsoft employee or vendor, I'm sorry you can't play. No prizes for you. And if you're a government employee, I'm afraid you can't play either. I'm very sorry about that. Something about bribery, I don't know. Cool. Now, the game itself is very simple. Now, I'm a big fan of this thing called Eurovision. And I understand it was once a big thing here. So to explain the game, I'm going to enlist the help of a friend of mine, Mr. Lordy. So what will happen is we will all stand up, and I will ask a question. And the question will have two answers. One answer will be heads, and one answer will be tails. Now, in English, we use the heads and tails of a coin to explain heads and tails. But I've heard that doesn't quite translate in Finland. So I don't know what you call this, but that's what the answer is. So if you think the answer is heads, you put your hands here. If you think the answer is tails, you put your hands here. Make sure it's very obvious. There's none of this. It's got to be very binary. Put your hands on your own bottom. Don't put your hands on other people's. That's not generally approved. So that's basically how we play the game. And we're going to have a practice run at this. If you get that answer wrong, you sit down and you're out of the game. Okay? And the last people standing are the ones who win the prize. And I'll rely on each of you to make sure things are being kept to the rules and nobody's cheating. Okay, so we'll do some practice questions first. So can I ask everybody to stand? Like I say, if you need assistance, please flag down a Microsoft employee. Last chance for people at the back of the room. If you want to take a seat, you can't play it from back there, I'm afraid. Okay, so first question is a test question. What is the most common worldwide deployment for IoT? Is it heads, smart metering? Or is it tails, connected chickens? Okay, let's try this. Good. Good, there are no chickens. That's what we like to see. Cool. So that was the guided question. We're going to have two more warm-up questions before we go. So, in normal human math, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and a lot of zeros and a 1, or 4. Good. If you got this wrong, then you shouldn't be here. Sorry. Right. I mean, we're open to everybody, but quite that. Cool. It proves you're not a robot. Can you use a floating point? Yes. So it could be floating point. Okay. So, first question. I'm going to hand over to Darius.
All right. Thank you. So, what is the name of the fictional company for tomorrow's workshop? Is it Microsoft Corporation Red Nose Clown Division, or is it Adventure Works Nosy? Nice. Many of you read the document.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
This is interesting. It's actually tails. So who wasn't paying attention in the keynote? Because there's like 50% of the room have sat down. Jeff came on in the clown suit. It's killing me. This is an easy question. Okay. They're only going to get harder. Okay. Developers. Dental hygienist. Developers. Okay. No dental hygienist. You're right, it was developers.
All right. What is Microsoft Cognitive Services? A group of ready-to-use AI services like vision and emotion, or a knowledge base you can ask anything to? Nice.
Fairly sweeping.
Okay.
You can see one tails in there.
Group
sorry, dude.
Ready-to-use AI services.
Yep. Okay. What is the version of Windows for holographic devices like HoloLens named? Heads, Windows Holographic. Tails, Windows 10 IoT Core. Oh, we're starting to see a bit of a mix of answers. You've got to decide.
Almost like 50-50 there.
Okay. Windows Holographic, it's in the title. It
right.
won't always be.
What is Xamarin Live Player used for? Add a video to your apps or see changes in your code live on a device?
Oh, look at that. We've got one wild card there. Oh.
See changes in the code.
You see, it really upsets me people that listen to my session. Like you can, you know. Okay. Visual C++ 2017 can compile Linux applications using GCC over SSH. This is worrying you, isn't it? Don't worry, it's an easy one. True or false? Okay. Good, good. It is true. So a couple of you there thinking, if I get this right, I'm going to win everything.
There's like some good knowledge in this crowd.
Yeah.
What was the code name for Microsoft Edge? Ooh, that's a tough one. Project Spartan or IE Next? Oh, nice. Project Spartan.
Spartan. Okay, we're down to what? About a third of the room left. They're going to get hard. What is the version of Windows 10 that runs on the Pi 2 and 3? Windows 10 IoT Core, Windows 10 Embedded Core. Oh, okay. It's IoT Core. You guys are good.
Pretty good, yeah. Wow, how many Windows 10 devices are there?
He was watching the keynote.
More than 500 million? Or under 300 million?
Yeah.
One, last choices. More than 500 million.
Good. I like people who listen to that one. That's good. Help. How do I exit Vim?
Is this one where you like just smash the keyboard? Like,
yeah.
why doesn't
Yank
this
power,
exit?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Colon WQ. Colon ST. Who remembers the cheat sheets from university? Okay. It is WQ. And if you don't want to save changes, you put a bang on.
All right, the Windows subsystem for Linux, WSL, can run services like SSH, Apache, and GDB server. True or false?
It's a lot of faith.
This is like really knowledgeable, Carl.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's true.
True.
Yep. And it was also a new feature we brought out in the Creators Update. Win32 apps can light up on Windows 10 using UWP APIs and the desktop app converter. True or false? Oh, okay. Everybody decided? True. You're doubting my Centennial APIs.
All right. What is the name of the built-in subsystem Windows 10 which supports the Bash shell? Cygwin or Windows subsystem for Linux WSL?
I think we're going to have to bring some hard questions out.
Yeah, this looks
We've got quite a savvy
really,
audience right
really
now.
like it.
Okay. How many degrees of freedom do Windows holographic headsets have? 6 degrees of freedom? 3 degrees of freedom? See, I know how you've passed this one to figure out the answer. You're like which one's the even number? It is heads. Wow.
All right, which cognitive service would you use to easily detect if someone appears to be happy? Vision API or Emotion API? Oh, this is going to divide
This
the
is
crowd.
dividing the audience.
Dividing, okay.
Yeah, this is going to be
Last
telling.
choices, all right.
Okay.
It's an Emotion API.
Yes. All right. So let's see. How many people do we have now? Okay. Maybe we need to drop a few more of you, and then we'll bring some of you on stage. Which feature is new for .NET Standard 2.0? Support for UWP, the C# language. This is why you're pros. This is why you're pros.
All right. What is Kubernetes? A development framework or a container orchestrator?
Who was paying attention in the sessions?
Not going to drop anyone this round.
No, wow.
It's a container orchestrator.
Okay. What was the original name for Windows? Bit of history here. Commander, Interface Manager. Oh, we've got a mix. Do you have a mix? You sure? Interface Manager. Okay, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Why don't you guys come up on stage? Big round of applause for the finalists. There are stairs at either side, or you can come up the front if you want. Okay.
Oh.
These are our intrepid finalists. Well, there's more of you than I thought there were.
Wait, it's like super knowledgeable crowd.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, just shuffle along a bit so everybody can get on. Cool.
Ready for the next one. All right. What does the Universal Windows platform use to ensure your app looks great across all devices, DPIs? So bitmap-based UI layout or a scaling algorithm? Choices,
Wow.
choices,
Universal.
choices.
Nobody trying to step out.
Oh, fair enough. A scaling
Okay, I think we're going to have to take the same question and make it a little bit harder now. The XAML scaling algorithm is based on 4x4 grid, a 12x12 grid. Who remembers their development of UWP apps? So now we have a mixture. We have a mixture of 4x4 and 12x12. Well, the answer is a 4x4 grid. Yes. Round of applause. Wow, and we have 3 winners as well. So congratulations, we have 3 prizes. So these are our winners for today as well. So for you guys, we have a Raspberry Pi 3 and Bluetooth speakers.
Congratulations. There you go.
There we go. Congratulations. 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 Thanks. Now, we do have plenty more prizes throughout the day. We have, of course, the big Surface laptop. Remember that you have to have those forms in. We'll be announcing the winner of that Surface laptop after the Q&A session. If you aren't here and we draw your paper, you won't win. So you need to stay through the Q&A session where, don't worry, there will be beer. So it'll be easy on you. Also, tomorrow we have the workshop. There are going to be some really cool prizes at the workshop as well. So please make sure you register at the registration session for the workshop tomorrow. It'll be a lot of fun and there'll be lots of prizes. And I'm going to now hand it over to Dennis, who's going to take you through Azure Serverless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to switch to the other side, and I'm going to switch my mode from like a game host to a technical evangelist on this side, actually. And let's see if we can get my, oh, there we go. Wow, nice. Thank you for that. So I don't have any prizes for this part of the session. This is just going to be code and deployments and stuff like that. So bear with me. It should be fun. So just very quickly to ask a quick round of questions here. Let me actually go ahead and restart my presentation from there. There we go. So we actually have that. There we go. How many of you actually are familiar with serverless? Heads up. Hands up. There you go. Wow, that's really good. It's like 50. We should have asked questions about serverless, clearly. All right, so for those who don't know, serverless is the awesomest thing that has been recently created. So the whole idea is basically going from that old way of working of having your virtual servers and maintaining the virtual servers, then going into the platform as a service where you just deploy your code into the cloud and it runs on this little kind of platform. And it's there going to something that actually separates all of these little services that you actually combine to make something greater, to make something better, quickly and efficiently and cost efficiently, most importantly. So the whole idea of that is that you do not only hardware abstraction, but also the software abstraction from going from the traditional servers to something that allows you to just run purely your code on demand. And it's completely event-driven, and it is instantly scalable. So imagine that right now, if you think about how traditionally we have been doing this, you had to scale based on how many users are going to get. Today, you are basically using platform as a service, setting what your scale is going to be. With serverless, you don't have to actually think about that. The system is going to handle that for you and scale according to those users. And the best part is it scales down to 0. So there are no users, there is no cost associated to this. So you have the micro-billing concept that you're billed for the seconds or milliseconds that you're actually executing your code on. So what is the Microsoft serverless application platform? What are the components? So we start with the actual platform over there. You have functions, and this is the core. This is the important thing that I would like you to remember after this session. Functions allows you to take your code, C# code, Node.js code, pull that code in to the Azure and run it. Logic apps will allow you to combine all of these things through the visual workflow to actually connect them and run together, and connect to the external systems, run all as one big system, and have an overview of what is actually happening when this abstract of an application. So you can use a bunch of different bindings, a bunch of different triggers. You're not actually limited by a lot of things when you're actually building the functions. So from those two top parts, the main things, the functional logics, what are we actually connecting on, and what is actually important? The data and storage, whenever something is dropped in your Azure Blob storage, in your Cosmos DB, Document DB, you can actually react on this information. So we have implemented already pre-made basically triggers and events that you can basically directly use from there. From messaging, listening to the service bus, listening to the event hub, and then to the gateway connectors that actually allow you to connect to your line of business applications. Then from there, when you have all the data that's coming in, flowing into your applications, flowing out of there, now you actually want to do something intelligent. Now you can pass all of that information to, for example, cognitive services that will actually allow you to analyze the data that you've got, bring an intelligent response back, and then push it forward to, for example, a bot by using a serverless bot services framework to actually just deploy your app directly using all of these services without anything running constantly. Now, what is Azure Functions, and how does Azure Functions really look like? I have a few slides. I'm going to run very quickly through the slides. I really want to get into the code and show you how this actually runs. It's much more fun that way. So basically, Azure Functions is your code and the event that triggers the code. So looks like that. And to give you an example of that, this is a sample for the JavaScript function. Personally, JavaScript is not my favorite. I'm more of a C# guy. I tend to do that a lot. But you can pretty much see here your triggers, your queues, your events, and the same thing in the C#. So basically what you have there, you have this new compiled class library that will be generated from your C# code. And inside of that code, you directly specify what is your actually function name. So inside of one class library, you can actually have multiple functions that you're calling. You specify directly here what are your triggers. So in this example, we're picking up from a queue, and we're picking up from the images queue, and we have a document DB, Cosmos DB there that's storing our data. And then we can have multiple bindings to different platforms there. Now, I'm going to show you a quick demo on how this actually runs in the production, and just to deliver on what does the infrastructure basically look like when you're building one of these things. So you have the user is connecting to your Azure web app, which can be a platform as a service. It can also be basically a function as well. But in this case, in our demo architecture, it's a web app. It's running as a platform as a service over there. And through that web app, the user is actually storing an image into this service. That image is going to be stored in the Azure Blob storage. It's going to send a message to the storage queue, and at the same time, it's going to make a reference in the Cosmos DB to that file and to the queue. At the same time, the application is all the time tracking in the application insights what is actually happening and keeping track of the actions there. Now, the functions is actually picking up from the Azure storage queue and then writing to the document DB what is happening, picking up the file from the blob storage. Now, it has that image, it has the file that the user has uploaded, and it needs to do something with that file, and from there, it's actually sending it to the content moderator and computer vision. So for some text analysis to see if this text is good, is it logical, and to the computer vision to actually see what is inside of that picture. Now, with that, we then go back and write to the application insights, so we have an overview of the whole application from one single dashboard. I'm going to show you how this works. So we have the Azure Application Insights, a view. How many of you are familiar with Application Insights? Not that many. OK, you're going to love this. Application Insights gives you the awesomest view into what your applications are doing. You definitely need to try that. You will have the local debugging running locally, and I'm going to highlight that in a moment a little bit more. Then you get to publish and do a continuous integration. Now, I'm going to skip out of my slides and jump over here. There we go. This is the awesomest application everybody should be using. It's a cat products review. It's a site which allows you to upload a product picture which may or may not contain a cat picture. Now, this is very important for us to analyze. Does the picture actually contain a cat, or does it actually contain something completely different? So for that reason, we're actually picking up the images, sending them to computer vision, and so on. So how does this simply work? I go and add the picture, select the picture from a file, and submit it in there. So before I actually do that, I want to show you how this was created. And I want to show you how these functions are created, because sometimes you go like, oh, there's this new technology, and you kind of go mystified. Oh, I have to learn so many new things. I don't know really how to do this. We made this super simple for you to do. So I'm just going to create from scratch a new function over here. So I'm just going to go new project. My mouse is acting up. There we go. New project, Azure Functions. All right, so that's going to create a new Azure Functions app for me. A few seconds, we should have it. There we go. So we have some settings files. You will notice that I don't have much else there. Oh, that's still loading there for a second. I clearly need an update to my machine there. Or I need to stop clicking things. This is one of those things when you go pressing F5 all the time. So add new item and add an Azure function. So adding an Azure function, at this point, it actually asks you, what kind of trigger do you want to associate this with? So I have blob trigger. I can listen to incoming blob events, or I can do an HTTP trigger, just simply listening for an HTTP request. And because everybody's certainly familiar with what an HTTP request is, I'm going to create a new one with just this. So creating an HTTP trigger, oh, that's the wrong file. There we go, function.js. So this is how the function actually looks now. So I have my function name over here. I actually have the HTTP trigger specified here. And actually right there, I have my authorization level. I can specify it right here how the users are actually going to access this function. And because this is a very simple function, I want everybody to be able to use it, I'm just going to say anonymous. You'll notice that IntelliSense obviously works. This is the same C#. And the file, the data is just basically coming in here and being triggered on that HTTP trigger request. Now, this is nice, and the coolest thing comes from the fact that basically at this point, I can press F5 and debug this locally. And that's the beauty of it, because we are actually running the whole Azure Functions runtime here locally on any platform, and you can actually just execute your code and test it right here. You don't actually have to go and deploy it in the cloud. So I can press F5 and deploy it locally, run it, test it fully. If I want to go and publish this to the Azure, right-clicking on a solution, publish, Azure Function App, and it's actually from the Visual Studio IDE, it's actually going to go and create the whole Azure Function app and deploy everything for me there. Now, this was a very quick demo of how to get started, but let's go back to our project and our little cat upload image file here. So what I have over here is I basically have my review image and text. I have the data over here, and then I have what is actually happening to this image. Now I'm going to demonstrate to you how does this actually work. So I'm going to set a couple of breakpoints, and I'm going to have this start over here. Just give it a small second. There we go. We have the funcdoc.exe starting. There we go. We are on. So this website, you can actually access this website. If you can see the URL, that's DC build SRVLS demo site, Azure website. It's a completely live website. This website actually does pick up that image, store it inside of our blob storage, and it will get picked up by my local Azure function. So I'm going to say this is a cute cat. I'm going to go create this one. Now I have status pending, because obviously this request has now been stored in the Azure blob storage. It stored a message in the queue, and now that is going to be picked up in a few seconds by my Visual Studio. The cool thing about this is that I can have multiple of these engines actually running at the same time, picking up these requests and running based on these requests. Now let me see if that actually uploaded. I should have it coming up over here. There we go. So I received that request from the queue. I have the image that was actually uploaded, and you actually see maybe over there, and it's probably too small. But if I go past this, I actually do two analyses over here. I do pass image moderation. Oh, sure. That's not supposed to present. OK, I have the, it passes the text. Does it actually pass the text? Because it's doing content moderation, and then it's doing the image moderation. So it's actually analyzing, did it detect cat? And in this case, yes, it detected a cat. So I'm just going to press F5 on that. It's going to be done. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to click back on my image. And it's going to say neatly status approved. And it's going to say it's a cat that is looking at the camera. That is very cute. All right. So to demonstrate a little bit more on how does this actually work, we have one dog picture over here that says status rejected because that was a dog. And I'm going to go add another picture over here, which I think could be possibly tricky of that. This is clearly a cat. I'm just going to post that image over there. That, I mean, in my mind, that is a cat. It may say it's a fox. Technically, I think that's a fox suit. So what's going to happen now, I'm hitting again with my image over here, picking up some information of that. And actually, right now, it's going to say that it did not pass the test. Let's see what it actually said on that test over here. Oh, rejected. That's a person wearing a costume. These cognitive services are getting really good. At some point, they couldn't recognize between a Frisbee and a pizza, but right now, they can actually do that. It's really scary. So you should not eat a Frisbee. Try that once. So what happens now is, like I said, all of this is going from your website to the blob storage, to the queue, picked up by the Azure functions, and then all of these little services are, through the instrumentation key, communicating back with the Azure, with the application insights. Now, this is how the application insights looks like, and this is a custom dashboard that I have over there in the Azure. Everybody's probably familiar with the Azure portal. What is awesome here is that when you set the application insights, you tie it with your instrumentation key to the application, and it actually starts picking up all the, oh, I should remove my debugs over there, because I think there may be somebody in the audience actually trying this at the same time. Thank you for that. I'll be receiving some images in a moment. Let's see how does our content moderation actually work there. So let's see, does that work? So what you will actually see over here is I will see all of my services that I have running. I will see my two cognitive services. I have my vision. I have my the content moderator. I have my Cosmos DB, which is obviously a globally scalable database for me to use. Then I have my storage account, application insights, and my website. That's all that I have running. Actually, I have my performance, how this has been working, and I have the whole flow of how the application is actually running over here. And that's the beauty of it. If any piece fails, you will actually see a little red circle over here, and you'll actually know that something is failing, that you need to fix it, you need to fail over into something else. And I can actually go as deep to actually see what information has been passed on, and I will see that 33% of the images have failed, 33% passed, and there's 22 that actually failed on text, and 11% that failed on failed text and image. This is a nice dashboard. It's lovely to look from the managerial level. The cool thing is that you can actually go and dig a little bit deeper. So when you have those issues coming up in the production, you can actually go and use the query language, which also supports IntelliSense, and which is super easy to do, to actually try your solution over there and see how it actually worked, and see all the data on how it has been performing in the production. But before we actually go into production, what is the one thing that you're supposed to do with your code if you make the code changes? So if I go in here and I enter some changes to the code, what is the first thing? You need to test your code, probably. You need to run the unit tests. And some of us write unit tests. Hopefully all of us write unit tests. But not many of us remember to run the unit test. Now, Visual Studio actually allows you to do two things that will make your life super, super easier. So people are retweeting me at the same time, like notifications everywhere. So Visual Studio helps you do this very easily. So what happens is that if you have your test set up for this, you can start something called live testing. So live unit testing, what it's going to do, which you're going to see here, it actually starts, and it does this partial compile of your code. What you will see over here, you see this new check marks showed up, and it basically said which test covered this piece of code. So if I go ahead and I start writing something else, you will notice that this turns into a little clock image, meaning that this is going to analyze now this. It's going to run the test that's appropriate for this piece of code, and then there's a message popping up all the time. So it's going to analyze it, run the test, and actually let me know immediately if my tests break. So from this, I can actually go and click and go into the test and analyze that test and change it if I need it. Now, this is all cool if you have the unit test running live, but what we really want to do is not right-click, publish, run the test locally and do that. We really want to do this in an integrated pipeline for the full DevOps stack. And how does that happen? Well, I obviously commit my code. I'm using Git over here. So what happens is I click on my solution and I go to commit. And you'll notice that this has actually been super much simplified in Visual Studio, that you actually have your Git integration over here. You can actually do branches over here. You can do your reviews over there. And you can actually do the commits over there directly. So it will show that there's one file change. So OK, I changed something. It's like the worst comment ever. There we go. I changed something, and it obviously synchronized locally, and now I need to synchronize it to the server. Now what happens after this, I'm going to go push that code in. What happens at this point is going to push my code into the Git repository. And because I have an integrated pipeline, basically, of continuous integration, what happens is this will kick off my build. And this is what it looks like over on this side. I have my builds and releases. I have my build created over here. Reviews Azure Web App over here. And from here, I can actually see, and from the Visual Studio, all the builds, how they're failing, how they're progressing, have they succeeded, and how the tests are going. And with this, it's super easy and super correct way to develop an application and actually deploy it to the cloud. Because after this point, I do publish, and I just dropped it into the Azure Functions. So after this, this is actually live in production. It's going to get picked up by the correct service, and it's going to run over there. So I'm going to jump back into slides now and just show you one more thing on the logic apps. So you have your code, you have your function actually running over there. Now you need to tie them together. You can basically write elaborate code inside of your functions to call another function, do other things. I would not recommend that. I would rather do logic apps. The cool thing is that you can set multiple kind of elements inside of the logic app workflow, and it is very visual. So whenever you need to redirect your application, change how the application functions, you can actually do it from here. So having, for example, here we have CSV to JSON Azure Function conversion, then we are sending it to the PDF, then we are storing it in the storage, and then we are sending an email. And all of this without any basically platform as a service services or any virtual machines running. This can be very elaborate, so you not only can you use Azure Functions, but you can actually tap into something completely different, including the Office 365, DocuSign, a bunch of different services like Slack, like WordPress, Twitter. There's 125 different built-in connectors that you can actually tap into. So that's pretty much it on the functions and logic apps and the serverless, and I would highly encourage you to try these things out. I feel like this is the future. This is how the applications should be developed. It gives you the freedom. It gets you to the market much, much quicker than you are used to. And tomorrow you have a chance to try this by yourself over here in the workshops. Or if you want to try this on your own completely, there is on AKAMS/try functions, there are some demos and instructions on how to get started. All right, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Oh, bear with me. All right, hello, it's me again. So, so today, the session I want to talk to you about is actually building PC apps with UWP. So you'll be happy to know, not so many slides on this one, more demos, so it's definitely one of my favorites. So I just want to first start off with this slide. So you've probably seen this slide a lot today. But I just want to maybe just talk about this slide a little more. So we're all on the same level set, so we have the same understanding of what the universal Windows platform is. So when we look at the top here, we're really discussing the devices. Windows 10 has a variety of devices because the one operating system runs across all of these. So whether it's a small IoT device, a mobile device, a PC, Xbox, HoloLens, Surface Hub, it's basically the same OS with a slight different version to really light up your application depending on the actual device. But the power is not necessarily just the devices. That's just one aspect of it. The great thing about UWP is actually the features that it offers, which is really the bottom part here. Because we all know that all the devices on the top come in loads of different form factors, screen sizes. And one of the biggest pain points you'll have is actually developing the user interface. Well, thankfully, with UWP, we have visual states to make sure you can have an adaptive user interface that works depending on the device size. We also have things like natural user input, so you can use things like gestures and gaze and speech. And then one of my favorites is the middle one. It's the one SDK and toolset. So this means you don't really have to worry so much about what SDKs you have installed as a developer, because all the checks that we do are at runtime. This gives you a lot of power because you can tone your app up or down at runtime rather than having loads of different compiler conditions for the various different flavors of your application. And once you've built your application, then there's all that headache you have as a developer. The one thing you want to do is get it into the hands of your users as quickly as possible. And this is the great thing about the One Store, because what you'll be able to do is do the whole management of deployments and updates for all your apps just through this one place. And I'll talk a bit more about the One Store later on in the session. And the final piece is that obviously UWP is very cloud ready. So you saw earlier we had the Microsoft Graph. These are just one of the many things that UWP is great at doing. But today I will be very specific. I want to talk about the PC. Does anyone here write apps for the PC? Not everyone writes apps for a PC. Only 99% of you. Damn. Okay. So I want to talk in particular about UWP being the platform for Windows 10 desktop. And in particular, some of the investments we're making. So we work very hard to make sure that the experiences that you've had in the past with WPF and WinForms and the like are very similar to what you'll get on UWP. We have an expanded API surface. To give you an idea, in the last SDK, we ported over an additional 1,000 features just in the UWP platform. And some of those are based on things like the SQL client connection, and we have others as well that maybe your native apps would be doing today. The other thing that we do with UWP is the open Windows platform roadmap. What this means is, rather than just develop an SDK and then say, here you go, have some fun, and boo, this is not what I want. What we have is we have a website that allows you to see the features that we're building before we've built them. In fact, we even show you the status of whether an item is being proposed and whether we feel that there's enough people wanting this item. The great thing here is, as a developer, you have the option of requesting a feature. So the product teams make sure that they're building the right things. What's even greater is you have the opportunity to convince your fellow colleagues to also upvote those. So if you have enough people voting for the same thing, then our stack ranking of our backlog is based purely from this. So keep that in mind. And then we have things like intelligent installs. Anyone here write a Wix or an MSI or something like that? And I found it a bit painful with DLL hell and things like that. See, I know some people are laughing because they've been there. They've sat at their machine crying for hours. So intelligent install in the UWP world is great. It's actually very smart, and as the name suggests. And I'll give you a demo of this later, but it works out diffs between the two versions and only install just those diffs. So it's very clever in that sense. And it also means that your applications can be deployed faster, and we do all the hard work around versioning, so you really just concentrate on your app rather than the deployment mechanism and updating mechanism. One of the other places where we're investing is better user telemetry. Who writes applications that don't crash? Good, you're not liars. That's great. No one put their hand up. So the good thing here is that we offer telemetry through the store. We show you all the metrics that you would want to know about your app, whether it's crashes or even just feedback from users. And I'll show you some of the telemetry stuff that you'll get through the store later on here. Collaboration. So the one thing that we want to do is we want to make sure we get the community involved. I've already talked about we're always listening and things like that, but there are some really key aspects we have here, like documentation. We know that sometimes our documentation isn't always the greatest, but we know you guys are really smart and you know how to solve these problems. So what we've done is we've made sure that our documentation is also open source. So if you see something that needs to change or you've got a better example, feel free to put a pull request in and we can review it, and we'll update our docs based on the stuff that you've found as well. This also includes some of the new things that we have to help UWPs be built faster and better, such as the UWP Community Toolkit. I'll show you, again, another demo of that shortly. And the final thing is enterprise productivity. I think one of the key things we do on a PC as a developer is make apps for other users. And especially in enterprise, where you have things like charting and data grids, we actually offer Telerik tools for free. So the great thing here is if you're a UWP developer, you can take advantage of all the Telerik RAD controls out the box at no cost at all. So this is my favorite slide because it goes straight to demo. So I'm going to show you just a few cool demos. Rather than do one demo and go back, I'm just going to do a whole load of them in one go. So I think the first one I want to show you, maybe an app that I've got using ink analysis. So the key thing to know is, as you've seen with all our devices, they come with something like this, a pen. You know what's cool about our pen? It has an eraser. So you can wipe and make mistakes and it's fine. Also, it never runs out. But it also means that from a child, you've all used a pen. So it's pretty natural. It's not something you learn. And the one thing we're trying to do is make sure that your applications can be intuitive. So I'm just going to show you an application that uses the pen. I'm going to call up a couple of my friends here, see if I can have Dave and Vlad. Or do we have Vlad? You can do. I said I didn't have many friends. See, I can't even get 2 of my friends on stage. So just to make this more useful, you can put that on. All right, so guys, what we're going to do here is we're going to take a selfie because all the cool people take selfies. So here we go. I'm going to run this application here, and let's take a selfie, and cool, get in the photo. All right, cool, 3, 2, 1. That'll do. It wasn't really great. You want to take it again? Okay. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what we can do with some of our technology. And this is using shape recognition and our inking APIs. And what I'm going to do is click here. So this is the ink toolbar. I'm going to select a red. I think that's kind of cool. And I'm going to, oh, go away. Yes, it's the power of the pen. I get it. Go away, Windows. Okay, so I'm now going to give Dave a red nose. So let's try this. And you can see there, although I'm not the perfect drawing of circles, I can actually put a red nose on Dave. As it just so happens, sometimes when you take a selfie, there's always that one person you just never want in the photo. So like this, for instance. Oh. And there we go. So what I can do, you can see I did shape recognition, and with shape recognition, I was actually able to blur out Etienne because I really wanted Vlad, but it's okay. And let me show you now some of the APIs that I use to do this. So first, let's start off with inking. I want to show you how simple it is in UWP to add inking to your application. Ready? With all these lines of XAML, actually, it's only just one line. One line alone will give you my ink canvas. This means I can put the pen to the screen, and it'll start providing all the ink technology I need. Now, the second line you see there is the ink toolbar. And again, it's just one line. I say, hey, you know what? I want an ink toolbar in this particular instance, and I'm just going to pass you the canvas that I want you to apply to. So it knows red pen in this case. So that was pretty simple, right? Well, it gets cooler, because let me show you some of the things we did here with the ink presenter around the analysis. So the first thing I say is, hey, ink presenter, can you make sure that this is available to anyone? So even if they don't have a pen, you still want to touch and mouse friendly. Then what I do is I say when they create a stroke, so in this case just lifting off of the pen, I want to fire an event. And then I need to then create an ink analyzer. The way to think of the ink analyzer is like a big bucket. And what I want to do is after every stroke, I want to put that stroke inside this bucket. And then at the end, I'll say analyze all the strokes, and it's going to look in that bucket and just check to see what it can recognize. So in this case here, you can see when the strokes collected, I'm going to add the strokes into the container. I'm going to analyze the ink. If there has been an update in the container from the previous time I checked it, I'm actually going to go and query the nodes. Now here I'm just querying for ink drawing, but it's good to know that actually in certain scenarios, especially in your apps, you may want to detect, is there a list? Is there a paragraph? Is there bullet points? And actually, this can actually tell you what the user's doing. So if you want to allow them to freehand draw lists, you can parse that and take that straight into an actual application UI. Now, in this case, I'm only interested in drawings, and I'm checking for certain shapes. So rectangles and squares. So every time I have a circle, I add a red nose. And every time I have a square, I remove a friend. That's cool, right? And that's it. That's all the code I have. So that was a really nice, simple demo. Now what I want to show you, because obviously a presentation at Microsoft is not really a presentation unless I have Northwind or Contoso. So I'm going to show you this. I'm going to load up my Northwind application. Might take a little while to compile here. People recognize this place? I heard it's pretty local. Oh, it's still going. Oh, cool. So here we go. So this is a UWP native app. Now, as you can see, it's the Northwind sprinkler system. And I've got a few things I want to show you here. So the first thing to note is this acrylic. Now, obviously, for demonstration purposes, I've changed it easy to see with the projectors. But you can see that I can see the desktop wallpaper as I move around. And this is all part of the Fluent design system, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. But for now, let's just see how I implemented this. So it's really simple. So what I'm doing here is I'm using something called an acrylic. And with that acrylic brush, what I do is I set the background source. So in this case, I've got a host backdrop. When I set it to host backdrop, what I'm saying is, please show the desktop. And then I set a tint color. In this case, it's like a purple blue. And then I also set the tint opacity. In this case, I want it basically not so opaque so you can see the desktop a little. And then a fallback color, because what you'll notice is when I click away, it's no longer in focus, so it goes back to the fallback color. This idea is to help drive focus of what apps should be used and what part of your app you want people to use. So that's the acrylic brush. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the data grid. So we talked about enterprise productivity. So here you can see I've got a data grid. Actually, this is the Telerik data grid. So it's got all the usual things you would expect with filtering and sorting. Now, I'm going to take my pen, and I'm just going to ink across just to show you that there are things you can do here as well to even drive great user engagement. So I can sit there and just draw a line, and if I don't want this one, I can say, yeah, I don't want this one, and it disappears. And again, let me just show you the code for the data grid. Now, if you've used, anyone used Telerik controls in here? Got a few? Yeah. So this should all look very familiar, actually, because what we've done here is just directly taken the code that they'd already had on their GitHub and directly ported it into the UWP app. Now, the final thing that I want to show you on this app is connected animations. So the idea with UWP is you want to help drive the users and their eye so they can see what's going to happen next rather than a straight page change. So you'll notice here that when I click through, it's a very rough page change. But with a connected animation, click something like this. What I did there was a page change, but you can't tell. And when I click back, can you see now it's a page change? So I only put it on the way forward just to emphasize this fact. I also slow down the animation as well so you can see it. But the great thing about this is if your users don't even like your application, it's fine, because they're probably going to sit there playing with it for a good few hours. So let me show you how this is done. And this, again, is also very simple. There are a lot of single-line APIs. But you'll see this on my first page. When a user selects an item, what I do is this. I use the connected animation service, and I get it for the current view, so this page. And then I prepare to animate. What I'm saying here is I want the composition API engines to take this UI element, and I want you to make sure that's ready, so when I transition page, you don't lose it. So in this case, the first thing you see here, where in quotes, is the key, so the dictionary key. And the second part is actually the UI element that the person has clicked on, so you can see that here. Once I've got that, I'm now ready to animate to my next page. And the idea here is, when I move to the next page, I now need to tell that element that I said to transfer to the second page where it needs to go. So again, I use the connected animation service. I get the current view. And then rather than prepare to animate, I use get. And notice that the key here is the same key that I used here. This then allows the composition engine, so UWP, to then understand that I should be taking this element, and I want to put it in this UI element on the second page. In this case, it's called part image. When I call try start, you don't have to worry about what happens to this image. You don't have to worry about where you should animate from which point to which point, whether you need to scale it. We take care of all that for you. You have the control if you want, but at the same time, you don't have to specify if you just want the animation to do a keyframe, and we'll sort all that out for you. Now, this is great, but there's one thing I want to do. You can see here I've got the loyalty section. So let me just do this and stop it. And I want to show you some of the cool things we're doing around the community. So I'm just going to delete this and start this up. So I want to show you the UWP Community Toolkit. Has anyone seen the Community Toolkit before? A few people, great. So what this is all about, this is where it's been developed basically by developers in the community for developers. This basically means we've had a lot of people asking for things in the platform, and we said, hey, you know what, that's great, but we're probably not yet. And they said, well, we've got all this code base that we always carry around with us. Why don't we partner with you, and we could just maybe make this toolkit? And that's exactly what we've done here. So you can see I've got a ton of controls that people use. I've got notifications, and by the way, this notifications is an entry from our notification team inside Windows. We have some animations in here too, some services, so the Office graph that you saw earlier, the Facebook services, Twitter services, because every line of business needs to make sure they have Facebook. And then we also have some helpers too. So if you want to get some more information, like maybe system services, you can see here it's telling me about my Surface Book that I'm using. But what I want to do is I want to show you how easy it is to use this. Now, every good developer knows that writing code is cool. But what's cooler is when you can copy it and paste it from somebody else. So I am now going to show you, unless it's intellectual property problems, then you should not do that. But I'm going to show you something really cool about this toolkit. It means that I'm going to write the loyalty page, which is blank at the moment. I'm going to take this loyalty page and I'm going to build it out purely by copy and pasting, and of course changing a couple of bindings. And that's it. I'm not going to write any C# code. I'm going to tell my manager that it probably took me to write this and have a lot of beer afterwards. So let's start with this. So here we are in my Northwind demo app. As you can see, it's just a grid, nothing there yet. Now, what I'm interested in is a master details view, because every app needs a master details view, I think. So you can see here, it's kind of cool. I can have a little sample. But what's great here is it actually provides me the zip I need for this. It also has the code and the documentation. So I'm just going to take this, and the most difficult part is actually making sure I copy correctly. It's taken years of practice to copy like this and paste. Cool. I can see my manager's probably watching this, slowly making sure my next bonus is non-existent. Okay. So I'm going to change a few things, because obviously my data model is not emails. My data model is always about Northwind. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add the binding for orders. Now, I don't have a data template of email, so I'm going to remove this. Now, this data here is all about the master side. So this is the list that you normally see on the left. So just to show you, I'm going to do this bit here first. So I'm going to remove these guys here, because I don't think I need that many text blocks. And I'm just going to change this binding to name. As you can tell, I'm very familiar with Northwind. The next thing I want to do is the details page. Now, I could just put a text box, but that's kind of boring. I think I want to use another control here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one I already know of. So I'm going to use the radial progress bar, because every app also needs one of these. Now, I want to show you a really cool feature here. See, I've got these sliders. I'm going to move these sliders around, and I'm going to get the UI to look exactly how I want it. So I think maybe that much, probably a bit bigger, 200 by 400. I actually kind of like the light gray. And it's also got a very finish blue. That's great. So I'm going to look at the XAML here. Now, notice what's happened here. These values are dynamically changing based on what I set here. So for instance, if I look at the value here, which is 44, if I change this, you'll see it's now 20. So when I copy and paste, I'm actually copy and pasting exactly what I see. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to copy this, go here. And actually, I'm going to remove all of this. And I'm going to change this to a grid and paste that in. Now, I don't have a column, so we'll remove that. Now, the value I want to do is I want to see how loyal my customers are. So I'm bind this to loyalty. And I'm going to keep everything else the same. And the other thing I want to do is, of course, I want to check the value. So I'm just going to add a text block in here. I'm going to bind the text to the same value, so you can see that too. Loyalty. And let's just increase the font size too, so you can see at the back. A bit too big. OK. So I haven't actually run this code, so I'm hoping it's just going to run and work. So let's do this now. Let's see what happens. Let's see if I can copy and paste my way through this demo. This is the most nervous. You know, Visual Studio starts building, and then it tells you, oh, it's all not going to work. All right, so I'm going to go to my loyalty section. Guys, if this works, I want a round of applause. You're very quiet. Oh, yeah, get ready, good idea. All right. OK, wait for it. These are all the items. If I click this, hopefully I get a radio gauge. Yeah, cool. Cool, and I even got a whoop. This is awesome. They told me Finnish people are very quiet. They also told me they don't laugh, so there you go, it's good. All right, so the other thing I want to show you now, my final demo. I bet you're wishing on slides now, eh? All right, so the next thing I want to show you is streaming install. All right, so we all know that PC apps come in various sizes. If you're a game, you can go into the gigabytes. If you're a WinForms app, you can go into the megabytes. Now, as happens here, I've got two applications. The they're WinForms applications, and what's special about these WinForm applications is they're half a gig in size. So it's actually not a very complicated WinForms application. It's one of my favorite Access databases that I have on Landmarks. And what I'm going to do now, and I'll explain this process, I'm going to double-click this AppX. I am going to install this application, but I'm going to launch it before it's finished. And I'm going to start playing and clicking around with the application. What you will notice is as I click around, not everything is loaded, but the application installer in UWP is smart enough to help you know this, and it will say, hey, it's not ready yet. So, are we ready? 3, 2, 1, install. Launch. London, no. Can I make sure? No, 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 no. OK, the others were too fast, but I got London. And what you'll notice now is now it's complete. It's done. Isn't that cool? Imagine now if you had a big application, you could actually stream your installation so people can start using this the second it's available. We do this already with Office, but this is just a great example. Now, let me show you another thing. I've now taken that WinForms application, and I've added some UWP APIs. And this here is going to install a lot faster. Notice, in this case, it's actually a lot. Notice that actually it's slightly larger because I built the same package, but it's 527 megs this time. Now, of course, you expect those things to take a while because it's going to install the whole lot, but not with the streaming install. What's going to happen is when I install this, it's going to do a diff between the first version and the second version, and it will install basically the new version by just working out what the differences were. So when I launch it, you can see here my update now is it shows all the nice images. When I click them, I'm going to call directly into the APIs for things like the map control, which are available in UWP. So this is the nice approach where I'm phasing in a Win32 with UWP. So when I'm finally ready for my UWP app, I can do this, all by simply just starting off with a simple AppX deployment. So I'm going to go back to the slides. Did you like those demos? Yeah, you know? Yeah, cool. All right. So in the keynote, I talked about Microsoft Fluid Design. There are 5 core bits to Fluid Design. I know the video went, but I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail about how you can actually incorporate these into your application and why. Why is it important to have these? So we're going to start off with light. So the idea of light is basically to allow you to see all the various things and help you guide the user to the right point in your application. So you can see here we use it quite a bit. The second piece here is depth. The idea is if you take everything your user wants to see, sometimes there's too much on screen that you need to show. You can use depth to actually break apart your UI and then build the depth so you can drive the focus as to what they should be looking at and then bring into focus the other things when they're ready. I want to talk about motion. So this is where you become the Steven Spielberg of your app. You decide how things should move around and to guide the user like I did with my connected animation in my earlier demo. And then material. Oh, do you want a photo? All right, cool. So then we have material. So the thing here is we have to make sure that all this relates to the real world. We want to create an emotional attachment as well, and this is what material is all about. So this was the acrylic that I showed you earlier, and this is what we're trying to encompass. Acrylic's the first one. Obviously, there'll be more to come, but this is where we're sort of heading. And then scale. Remember I talked about all the various devices across Windows? Well, actually, Fluent Design is purposely built to help you scale the way you want. So you can make sure that regardless of what device your application is running, we will make sure the controls look right and they map in accordance to what the user expects based on the various inputs. So these are the 5 core things. Now, the next thing I want to move on to is the Windows Store. So I briefly touched on this earlier, but there are 3 things I want to discuss, and that's Discovery and Reach, the Commerce Platform, and the Dev Center. So I've already told you we have 500 million active devices across 200 countries, but this will include a mixture of apps, movies, games. This is important for you as a developer, believe it or not, because if a user is coming to the store for these items, it means they're most likely to even stumble across your app, even if they'd never had the intention to install it. How many people have ever installed an app without actually going purposely to the store for it and impulse installing, right? This is one of those ways, and we help do that by 2.5 billion impressions per month. We have the commerce platform. So these are like in-app purchases, trials, bundles, downloadable content, subscriptions. We have mobile operator billing, because the most difficult part of selling your app is sometimes getting people to put the payment instrument in. With mobile operator billing, they can use the mobile operator to do that billing. So getting your app is as easy as either logging into your PayPal account or using the mobile operator. And finally, the store for business. This is a great way for you to sell your enterprise applications using MDM solutions. With the Developer Center, we have analytics, demographics, and real-time reporting, and I'll show you a couple of those screenshots later on. And we have, if anyone here writes code for somebody else, you probably always find the most difficult part is letting them give you their username and password so you can log into their account. Well, not on a store for business. What they can do is they can set up the accounts so you can have the role as a developer and write all the code and publish the app, but not necessarily take a look at the financial information, but they can control that. So they can make sure that you only see the bits you need and they can only see the bits that they need. That's really important. And the other thing are APIs within the portal. So the great thing here is you can submit your app through the store via your build process and your continuous delivery, and engagement services and sales. This is kind of an interesting one, the engagement services, because what you can do, if a user has installed your app, you can help target notifications to certain users. So you can say, I want to find all people in Finland aged between the age of 18 to 30 based on a particular gender, and I want to send them a notification saying, hey, you've used my app today. How about a offer on the next one? And then you can actually give them a discount code through this. You can even do the opposite. Hey, you haven't used my app in 3 weeks. What's going on? And things like that. So this is really important because you can always have control of the engagement, which is really important. I want to show you the PDP page. So this is what we have for Forza. So if I can turn up the sound. Yeah, thank you. It's the one thing if I know that Finland's great for, it's good drivers, right? You guys are pretty good with Formula One and rally and everything. So this is the product description page. As you can see, it's immersive, it's designed to help get the user enticed, and you have access to all of that. What's good to note here as well, actually, Forza Horizon 3 is also a UWP. So they're using all this gaming stuff in the UWP, and it's the same game that you'll get across your Xbox and your PC. So that's a bit about the store page, and this is what you'll get as a developer. So you'll get information about the acquisitions, the installs, and things like that, markets, which is really powerful. You'll also get the usage. So how are they using your apps? Is this a new session? Are they people that are are they returned users? This is really important for you, and you can even work out the number of user counts. So if you have a drop, you can sort of figure out maybe my update, they didn't like it and something went wrong, and this will then help you work out how to then rectify the problem. And the final thing here, as I mentioned before, we apply health and analytics here. So you can see, this is actually, what you're seeing here is the analytics for the UWP Community Toolkit. You can see that as we go through the releases, clearly when we have a release that has bad code in there, you can see where we get more crashes, and then we fix it in the next version, so they start to take a drop. And these are all important things as a developer you can control. The nice thing is you see this, and hopefully the users won't see it again because you'll have enough time to fix it. And the important thing here is that we will even provide you the stack dump so you can download that dump and analyze it in your favorite tools. So there we go. So I've talked again about quite a few cool things in UWP, but I think my main call to action for you today is just give it a try. See what you think. If you like it, let us know. All right, thank you. I'm going to pass you on to Vlad now.
Awesome. Thank you. Hello, everyone. You may remember me from the morning. I was quiet because they didn't give me a microphone. So what I want to talk about today is about modernizing desktop application. And before going there, obviously, I would like to ask you, how many of you ever developed a desktop app? Oh, almost everyone. And then how many of you actually want other users, other people to use your application, that desktop application you developed? Quite a few. OK, then this is for you. That's a good thing, because you want other people to use it, right? The bridge, basically, if you ask, like, tell me one thing about Desktop Bridge and like what's the most popular, or like what the most important one, is that you can reach more users with your application. And we just put a few applications here on this slide that use Desktop Bridge for publishing. Developers of this application use Desktop Bridge for publishing them to Windows Store, again, to reach more users, to provide better packaging. And to do all this stuff, I'm going to talk later. And again, in a bit more details, basically, Desktop Bridge, it's a set of technologies, both on the tool set and the platform side, that helps your developers to publish existing Win32 applications and games too to Universal Windows Platform. And what it does, it just creates, ultimately, it creates a trusted UWP application package from your existing either installer or just binaries, and obviously with Visual Studio from your source code. There are three key things about Desktop Bridge. First, it's simplified and trusted deployment, because to create this package, the system guarantees that first, it's going to be easy to deploy. Second, through Windows Store, you know that it's a trusted deployment. Either it's a Windows Store for consumer or it's a Windows Store for business. And obviously, it's a great way to uninstall your application, because if the application is bad or users don't need this application for some reason, they can uninstall it and then can make sure that everything is clean, there's no waste left, and it doesn't affect other applications on the system itself. The second thing, I already mentioned that it's greater reach and easier monetization. Greater reach is because Windows Store now is on every Windows 10 machine. We do all kinds of promotions. You can see application recommendation start menu. We have all sorts of referral programs. So that's really a good way to reach more users, especially those users who never heard about your app or never trusted traditional distribution sources like download.com or Tucos. You remember those, right? And from the monetization perspective, you basically, if you want to monetize it, you don't need to run your own commerce engine. You can just use Windows Store. Or in certain countries, let's say, then they don't use credit cards, or credit cards are not popular. So they pay with their mobile phones. They do mobile payments. And you can use all of these. You can use in-app purchase and all sorts of stuff. Again, when you convert your application to UWP using Desktop Bridge. And the third, which is my favorite, is about modernizing your app. So adding features that are only available on Universal Windows Platform. Like we showed during the keynote, we showed the Magic's Movie Edit Pro application. They actually use UWP platform for doing mixed reality experience, which was not possible if it was just a Win32 app. And in terms of packaging options, obviously we have a desktop app converter, which helps your installer package converted to UWP package. Because the way it works, it just records whatever your application, whatever your installer does, and creates a snapshot of what has done, what the installer has done, and then you can basically play that snapshot on the user system. You can use Visual Studio 2017 if you want to debug your, obviously you won't. If you want to debug your application as a converted application, if you want to provide additional functionality, there is a special Visual Studio 2017 template that can help you with debugging and packaging. And also, if you have one of those 5 installer engines, I would say, if you're using them, then they already provide support for Desktop Bridge because you can just tell them, okay, I want to create not just a traditional desktop package, let's say not an MSI package, but UWP package, and then they will build it for you using all the parameters you used before for your installer. Let's talk a bit about Desktop App Converter. As I mentioned, the way it works, you provide it your installer. It runs it in a sort of a container, records what you've done on the file system, on the registry, and then it basically provides you with the package that when user installs it, then it will be playing back all the changes on the system. And all these changes going to be made in an isolated environment, so it doesn't affect other applications. And once your application is uninstalled, it will just remove it and keep it as it was before they installed your app. When Desktop App Converter has done with its work, you basically have an application package. You need a certificate to sign it, obviously, and some additional package files. And again, if you just have your files, like if your application can work as a, let's say, a portable version of the app, then you can just create this package manually, and all you need is just a create a manifest file, which will specify all the tiles you need, the name of the application, the identity, and so on. So that's a very good thing, because if your application, all it does, from the installation perspective, if all it does is creates a shortcut in the start menu, and then just copies all the files to, let's say, program files, then you don't really need a Desktop App Converter. You can just package it by yourself, control all the parameters, and it's gonna be good. You don't really need an installer. If you want to use Visual Studio, especially if you want to debug your application and just make some changes, then we have a template. So you have your, the application itself. Then we provide you with a special kind of project that will help you debugging it, not as your application, not as your original application, but as a deployed through UWP application model. And we also give you the template for creating the actual package. So you can package your app and then deploy it and distribute and obviously upload to the store. So basically, once you're done with the debugging and you feel like everything is good, you just create an app package the same way as you do with the universal Windows application. And it gives you basically there on the right, it gives you the same structure, the same way as you do with UWP. Let's actually switch to a demo. Bam and bam. Yes, this is my demo. Shan, in the previous talk, he already showed the fun part of my demo. I'm going to show the part. So I have this desktop app, and Shan also had a desktop app for the app streaming demo. And I'm going to just install it the same way he did it. Double click, install. No fancy streaming here because it's quite a small app. And I have this application right here, Light Tracker, right? And you can launch it, right? Oh, awesome! It's a WinForms app and it works. I just installed it as UWP. And you probably made it like, what's the difference? I don't feel like, okay, I have my app and it just works. The biggest difference for me personally, because it seems like a boring app, I can uninstall it. And when I say uninstall, it doesn't show me, this add remove programs, applet, so I need to click that button and wait for uninstaller to work forever. I can just click uninstall here and it will uninstall it the same way it uninstalls apps I deployed from Windows Store. Isn't it awesome? Okay, back to slides. So second part, it's greater reach. Again, as I mentioned, you can distribute your application through Windows Store or Windows Store for Business if you're targeting enterprise users. It enables your application Windows 10s, because you remember we already actually selling devices targeting, let's say, education, and they're quite cheap, but they have Windows 10s installed, which means you can only run apps from Windows Store. But desktop apps converted through desktop bridge are also Windows Store apps. It means that you can install it on Windows 10s and have a greater reach from the device perspective. You're getting basically, from the target audience perspective, you're getting a lot of markets. You don't need to create like web, promote this website through these markets. You just know that you already reach them. It's there, and people will see either they using search terms, or again, the promotion mechanism the store has. And again, as I mentioned already, you have store commerce platforms, so you can use it and monetize your app. There is one example of a good app. How many of you know Kodi? Oh, quite a lot. So you know that it's like a media center player, like a huge app with a bunch of capabilities around showing pictures, video, music, and so on. They decided to try desktop bridge. So they basically converted their application to UWP, they published to Windows Store, and they were amazed how many new users they got. Because, of course, they had a huge audience already, but some people never heard about Kodi. And somehow, those people found Kodi in Windows Store, they installed it, and it was just a huge success, both for us and obviously for Kodi. They were so happy with that, so they decided that they want to reach even more customers, and they started converting their application to full UWP so they can work on Xbox One and Xbox One X that were recently announced. Photoscape Pro is another example. Again, they converted their existing Win32 application, and they now commerce system and do better monetization, which they are happy with. And my favorite part, modernization. So again, the way is the same. Desktop Bridge packages your existing Win32 app for Windows 10. You can keep your application as is, or make a little change if there is some incompatibility with the UWP application model. Usually, it's just as it is. However, once your application gets an identity, and you create a manifest, so it's like all the tiles and everything is pretty, and you can use this identity. You can basically provide an identity within a manifest. You have access to a lot of Windows 10 APIs. And you can use them like Cakewalk using with Sonar. So basically, there is new MIDI API on Windows 10. For example, you can use Bluetooth MIDI devices. And it's only available for UWP. So these applications basically detects if I'm running on Windows 10 and I'm an app installed from Windows Store, I'm going to use these APIs. And it's just better for users and better for the application. Let me show you another demo, and it's about modernization. It's actually not one demo, but many of them. And I want to start from sharing. You know, what's the best way to use your modern devices? Obviously, I want to share a picture. Not on Twitter, though. I like this picture. So let me share it. You see, I have a Twitter here and OneNote. I can share it by email, but I want to share it through my desktop app. I have a desktop app. I love it. I just want to use it for sharing that picture. And what I do, as you see here, it kind of looks like a UWP UI, which it is, because what we've done, we took a existing WPF app, then we created an additional UWP component that packaged along with this application. They can exchange data, they can exchange, they can basically communicate to each other. And I can just share this picture using this UWP piece to my .pf application. Let's just share it. Here we are. That picture on the left you see on the top, I just shared it with using UWP sharing mechanism to a .pf app. That's a big deal. That's a first, you can use desktop bridge with your existing Win32 app in terms of modernization. Let me show you another way. I have this Nosy application, which we will probably use tomorrow. It's a Win32 app. I'm not even sure if it's .pf or WinForms, but it's it looks like a typical enterprise application. I want to share this picture once again. I just love this picture. I'm going to share it this time to this Nosy thing. And the UWP component we developed for that Win32 application lets me use pen, right? I can draw something here. This is awesome. Shen, you should love it because it's pen. Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah, and I share it. And you see, I've got a notification, and that's again a UWP capability, and I'm getting this notification in a .pf app. Isn't it awesome? Let me show you another example. Let me close these guys. I have a sort of database application, and I have a client that is huge because my resolution is quite low for this screen. What I want to do is to create another line in this WinForms app. You see, I was clearly testing this application. Let me put the font, and then let's say this time I live in Redmond, again in Washington, and I save it to my database. And in this UWP application, I can use data from that application, not just by sharing data with somewhere in the cloud, which is a cool thing, right? But this time it's not the cloud, it's locally on my machine. And these applications, they're actually not part of one package. Those are two different applications. But with the desktop bridge and Universal Windows Platform, I can create a thing called app service. And I can use app service from other applications. And in this case, it's a UWP app. So I connected through app service, and I want to do a request to my database using ID field. Submit it, and here we are. We've got that line from a WinForms application, my UWP application, which is not even part of the same package. And last thing I want to show you is, you'll be surprised, it's a UWP app. You see, it's a beautiful XAML app, and those of you who are attending tomorrow's workshop, you know that you need to use this app for making sure that you install all the components. The best thing about this application that it uses access to machines registry and file system and does a bunch of checks that UWP app usually doesn't have access to. And the way it works is that it has a Win32 component that basically plays like a Win32 application. It has this Win32 app service that does all these checks for me and then just gives information back to UWP part. Which means, what does it mean? It means if you have an existing Win32 app and you want to create a beautiful XAML interface with all sort of composition, unconnected animations, and blur, and fluent design, you can make it, but you can still use existing code with maybe a bunch of proprietary libraries you would never be able to convert to full UWP. You can just use it behind the scenes. That user will enjoy a good UI. So if I click this button, you will realize that my machine, my work machine, is not ready for the workshop tomorrow. I did all these checks. This is how you can make it. Back to slides. So what I've done, let's just recap, or recount, as some people say. My first demo was WinForms data application. It wasn't actually first demo, one of my demos. It was WinForms data application with data application, then a test client, and they communicated through app service to each other and also to the database to get the data. That was the one way. And they were not packaged together. There was a different application. That one was UWP, and this one was a Win32 converted with Desktop Bridge. When I was sharing a picture, right, from Edge browser, I was just basically using share contract to access my .pf application, because this WPF application was providing a sharing mechanism through a little UWP component. And that UWP component and the photo app, they were packaged together. Then for our checklist, as I mentioned, we had XAML UI, we had an app service that was communicating with the Win32 background task, and Win32 was doing all this dirty job going to registry and checking file system and providing data back through app service to XAML UI. You can do even more. If your app does shell extension, you can make it. If you're using custom fonts, you can make it. If you're communicating with all sorts of services, or you act as a service, your app acts as a service itself, you can declare firewall rules because you need it. If you have a complicated COM servers inside your app and you want to provide these services to other applications, yes, you can, using our manifest mechanisms, you can just declare it, and it will be acting as it was just a pure Win32 app. If you want to debug it and you just enjoy Visual Studio, which is a dev tool, right? You can use Visual Studio 2017. And obviously, before you publish your application to Windows Store, you need to run the application certification kit. And WAC currently supports apps converted with Desktop Bridge, and it can do all these sort of checks. So call to action. First, if you have a Win32 app, and clearly many of you have, try Desktop Bridge. And that link that usually on the slides, they never put real links, right? And this is not an exception. It says ak.ms/desktop bridge. That's the first link. Visual Studio 2017 with the debugging for Desktop Bridge applications and see how it works. Provide feedback on user voice. Go to user voice and look for Desktop Bridge. And again, for all these links and for all the links for tomorrow's workshop, please go to ak.ms build tour and try things that we put there. That's it for my talk. Thank you for watching and listening. There are more things for us to do today. You see, that's my talk, 3 p.m. Desktop Bridge. Then we have a break for half an hour. Man, that's a long break. And then we have the best part of today's agenda is Q&A, where you can ask us different questions. Please ask nice questions, right? And we will give you nice answers. Thank you very much.